Hi everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another special video. And today I have with me once again the one and only Raphael from Radiant Reality Tarot. Hi, Raphael.
Hi, Heather.
Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who are not familiar with Raphael's work, I highly recommend you check out his YouTube channel, Radiant Reality. I'll post a link down in the description below. He does monthly and weekly forecasts that are absolutely brilliant. And he's also doing a solstice event. I'm not personally doing a solstice event because I'm having a real life event. I decided to align it with what's going on in my birth chart a little bit, but Raphael's doing a really awesome event with a human design expert, which is going to be super exciting. And he's going to take you through a future life progression session in order to create the future you want for 2021. So it's super exciting. I'll post a link for that down in the description below as well. And thank you, Raphael, for being here to talk to us about the Justice card.
Hey, thank you so much for that intro. Yeah, it's amazing to be here. I'm really loving the project. As I always say, I think I've learned so much about astrology from you. So working on the collaboration has been amazing. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
All right. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we are here to talk about the Justice card. So, Lady Justice. And this is one of those cards that a lot of sort of newbie readers tend to be a bit like, because it's got so many different, I mean, they've all got so many different meanings and connotations, but this is one that tends to stump people. And in a lot of ways, it's actually really simple to read. So the Justice card, in its astrological association, is ruled by Libra. And one of the things about this card as well, I often say to people, kind of think about it like this. In the Wheel of Fortune, so if you remember in that one, we saw the Sphinx with the sword at the top. This would represent the cosmic law. So the Justice card kind of represents where human life or human life kind of mimics the cosmic law and looks for not only balance but also fairness and equality. And this is where we can kind of see the sword represents the severity or the energy of meting out the justice, and the scales represent the logic and the reason that we see on the other side of it. So when we talk about Libra, would you say that those are things that kind of tie in?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Libra is all about fairness, equality, justice. You'll see this especially in people who have Pluto in Libra. They tend to be very intense about injustices, especially when it comes to the law. So if they have like their Pluto in Libra, like that whole generation has that to a certain extent. But if they have Pluto in Libra and it's like prominent in their chart, like on their ascendant or with their sun or with one of their personal planets, you'll definitely see that in them. And so that would be the most probably extreme example of the energy that you're describing there. But even with Libras in general, they want things to be fair, balanced, equal, and they'll play devil's advocate. They'll do what they need to do in order to make sure all sides are represented. They're not just about harmony and balance in terms of keeping the peace. They want to create balance in all in all areas.
Yeah, love that. So also in the Justice card, we see this will represent literally law, the legality. It will see all sorts of things where we're looking at contracts, making decisions. So like if you were to see this card coupled with, say, the Two of Cups, that would literally be like a marriage commitment, because here you see like the legality or the almost like the paperwork or the document, and the Two of Cups would be the partnership energy that comes in with it. Interesting thought about this as well. So even though in numerology we don't simplify the master numbers, this card is numbered number 11,
Mhm.
which I kind of find interesting with the whole Libra balance kind of thing as well, like the 1 1. So if you were to combine that, what you would actually be looking at is the High Priestess. And if you can see the similarities there in the cards is quite striking. And what I find interesting about this is if they were like, so I've always said that the High Priestess is the first gate that we pass through into life. She literally represents the mother or the vehicle that would bring you in, but she also represents the internal spiritual realm. And that's why her colors are light and dark, and she speaks through impression and intuition. Whereas the Justice card, or Lady Libertas, as she's been called, I don't think you guys know that, right? In the States, you would literally see her. She, with all of the red energy that surrounds her and the stone pillars, it's all very stark, which kind of reminds me of, like that Venus in Libra, because it's like a masculine energy rather than it's like feminine sort of quality. And so what you're seeing here is the very real or external expression of that same kind of spiritual law, let's say.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like the kind of human element of it being kind of like justice being served on this plane, because I think we talked about with was it the Wheel of Fortune? It's like higher law.
Yeah.
And we talked about that being more like Sagittarian, Jupiterian, which is definitely a thing. Like Sagittarius is more like moral law and higher and ethical law, and they don't necessarily abide by the rules if the rules are not in alignment with their morality, whereas Libra is about like actual physical law and creating justice in the real world. And I mean, part of that definitely I think has to do with the masculine energy of it, right? It's like a masculine cardinal sign.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh,
so it's kind of like creating something from nothing, right? So yeah, I do like that association there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, cool. So, what I also noticed with this card as well, it can represent the masculinity of women. So, if
Mm.
a woman shows up through the Justice card, she will usually be in a position of power. Usually, somebody that's a bit of a mover and a shaker, or somebody that makes final decisions. And this is one of the other things that you can see with this card as well. It can represent the moment where something is finally decided, or where you've finally made a decision, or the decision has been made for you, and now you're getting the almost like the results of whatever that decision has been for you. I actually had a question about that as well. So people talk about Libra and they talk about indecision and stuff. Where does that come from?
Well, so Libras, it's kind of interesting that that's like, a decision is made because Libra is about sort of weighing the options, right? And that's kind of where the indecision comes into play because Libras in particular, especially like Libra sun and rising people, they have a difficulty making decisions because they're always taking into account the needs of other people as well as their own needs. And so they want to make sure that their needs are being served, but they're not stepping on other people's toes or they're not neglecting somebody else's needs in that process. And so that can make it difficult when you're considering so many different sides of something. And also, they want it to be that's kind of goes along with like the fairness, the equality, right? They don't want it to be one sided necessarily. And there is like a lot of deliberation that can go with that. So, yeah, that's kind of the indecisiveness. But there are I would say when Libras make a decision, it's going to be like the fairest, most, well thought out decision as opposed to like an Aries person, which they want what they want when they want it. And it can be quite impulsive and sometimes not very well thought out. Like, I'm not hating on Aries people. I have my Mars in Aries, so I do that plenty. But there is a difference there.
Wow, that's awesome. So when we talk about Libra and the law, then how does that connection kind of work? Because the way that I see it through the card is that it literally represents where you are doing things that have a legal slant to them. And this can, like I said, it can be anything from a partnership and a marriage right through to, you're waiting to sell a house or you're waiting to buy an item. Like it can be, and literally everything in between. So because we talk about Libra and law, but nobody really goes beyond the surface. And I know you know this. So I'm like, I want to get the good.
Well, it's definitely Libra. It very literally represents law, justice, legal proceedings, but also specifically contractual like agreements, right? Agreements between two parties. It's two people coming together and finding some sort of balance and coming to an agreement or negotiating on something. And so there's that aspect of contracts. Also, specifically like one-on-one legal battles would be more Libra. And so thinking about like lawsuits, right, where people are like in some sort of civil suit or something like that, or in like a lawsuit with two parties that would be more Libra, as opposed to something higher like a Supreme Court decision. Like that would be very much a Sagittarius energy because it's like a higher, more overarching type of law. Libra is law, but it's specific to like common situations that you would encounter as an individual person versus that Sagittarian law,
Mm.
which would be a little bit more higher up in the totem pole there.
Wow, love that. It makes sense as well, actually, because as you were talking there about like something that had maybe like a bigger slant to it, what I
Mhm.
was seeing in my head was the Justice card coupled with literally the Wheel of Fortune. So
Yeah.
a reversal of something. So, you know, maybe you've been under something and then you have that kind of like, wow, this was really not going in my favor. And then it just swung at the last moment. You could also see that if you would couple the Justice card maybe with like the Hierophant, that would be, you know, bigger sort of governmental law, corporate law, all that kind of realm as well.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. That's interesting. So yeah, and I mean, even in astrology, you would be looking at like what's in Libra, like what's being paired with what. Like there's like a whole big thing. You're not just looking at Libra, like law, and that's it.
Yeah,
You can get more detailed and more specific when you see what that's paired with, right? Just like with the tarot cards.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Actually, it gives me a really good example here. So you can see Lady Justice there covered in all of her red, and we've seen this whole motif before in the Emperor.
No,
And you
yeah.
see how there's garbed in like really similar sort of energies there. And what's really, really interesting about this is the Emperor represents,
Oh, I gosh, I don't
you
remember.
remember? It
Oh
represents,
no.
it's fine, it's fine. It represents Aries and
Yes.
Justice
Okay.
represents Libra. So you're literally looking at like the two halves of a whole in one respect. And I find that really interesting. So if you look at her pillars, they're the same sort of color and material as his throne.
Yeah, she's like the female counterpart. That makes sense.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So, and there's, I mean, that's one of the things that I love about tarot. There's so many different links and ways that you can see it. Um, so, yeah. I mean, that's about as much as I have on the Justice card. Do you have any questions about it? Or
I feel like we covered it pretty in depth here, and this is the second time we recorded this too. So I feel like we just nailed it. Like we got right
yeah,
in there.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. I mean, there is obviously you could really unpack it and go into it for hours, but I think that's everything that you need to know about this card and like the way that it can show up.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that information. This is always super fun to do. If you guys want to watch the whole series, you're going to have to subscribe to Raphael's channel as well because we're doing every other video on one of our channels. And so, again, the link for that is down in the description below. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.